These are amazing representatives across the board from the documentary industry, and you'll hear about them in a minute. We have filmmakers who've been working on their projects for quite some time. You'll hear what stages the projects are in and where they are. You know, and at the end of it all, at the end of the day, you're gonna hear 6 pitches, and the winner is going to be announced on the final day of the festival, and that winner is going to receive a camera package from Sony, our co-presenter, and it's a very amazing camera package that they've donated to that winner. So this is, you know, like I said, quite serious. And part of this also is a learning experience for all of you who've come here. You know, as I said at the beginning, we hope we give you the tools to go out and become great storytellers, and this is part of the process. Pitching has really become a really essential part of the business, and so we hope that you take away real actionable items from what we're gonna give to you today. So with that said, we're going to kick off part 1 of this, and I'm going to introduce our moderator, who, thank goodness, is going to take this out of my hands. Very experienced moderator, and I'm going to let him introduce himself a bit. He's going to do some housekeeping, give you an idea of how this is going to go, and then he's going to introduce the rest of our panelists. So, Brian Newman, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah, and thanks to all the sponsors of Doc NYC. Very glad to be here. We have had one of the most nerve-wracking couple of weeks. All of us here, I think, are suffering from great anxiety. But if you could only imagine that during that, you had to prepare to pitch in front of an audience and in front of a group of panelists, our pitch people today have it much worse. But we're going to try to make it better for them by not just responding to their pitch, but also giving some general advice about the things that were strong, the things that were weak could be better, and also just general best pitching practices. So those of you in the audience who may be doing this in the future, learn a bit about the pitch process as well. So it's not just a smackdown or anything like that. We're trying to have a learning experience and really help these filmmakers get to the next stage with their project, all of which have great projects. So my name's Brian Newman, and I'm a consultant, I'm a distribution and marketing consultant with multiple different documentary filmmakers, as well as many brands like Patagonia that are now making films. And today we are going to have 3 pitches in this session. There'll be 3 more after the break, after lunch. Each group of panelists who are pitching will have about 10 minutes total. It'll probably be divided up with an intro and then a 5-minute screening of their trailer and 5 minutes to pitch. Now, when we get ready to watch their trailers, we're all up here on the stage and can't really see the screen. So we're going to take a moment to go sit down in the front row and watch their trailer. And then while you're giving them a huge round of applause, we'll all run back to our respective seats and let them pitch. It won't take off of their time, so they'll still have a full 5 or so minutes to continue their pitch session for a total of 10 minutes. Then after they're done, we'll have 20 minutes of feedback from the panelists here on the stage. And we will then, if there's time, we'll open it up to some Q&A from the audience, which could be about the pitch, or it could be for specific panelists, like what they're looking for, that kind of thing. If we don't have time because of the questions we have on stage, we have reserved some time at the end of this entire session for the audience to ask some general questions of the panelists as well. So before we get started with their pitch, we're going to make them nervous for a few more minutes as we introduce each of the panelists they're going to be pitching to. And I'm going to start with my good friend on the far end of the stage, Daniel Chalfin with Naked Edge Films. Daniel, you want to say a quick intro of who you are, what your company is? We want to spend just about a minute per panelist saying what you do.
Thank you. Good to be here, thank you. Okay, no political comments. My name is Daniel Chalfin. I run a company called Naked Edge Films. We produce and executive produce documentaries. Recent titles have been Southwest of Salem, which just won a Critics' Choice Award, Silenced, was just nominated for an Emmy, and various other feature-length docs.
Okay, I'm Julie Anderson. I'm the executive producer of documentaries and development for PBS here at the New York station, WNET, which is Channel 13. I basically take pitches from filmmakers with films that are in pretty much development stage, which is when we like to start getting involved with films. And we look for very strong documentaries that are interesting to the PBS audience. And we're looking for some multi-part series right now, and I guess that's it.
My name's Elaine Fontaine Bryant. I'm the Executive Vice President and Head of Programming at A&E Television Network. And I am a colleague of Molly Thompson, whose name you probably know much more. She runs up A&E Indie Films. She's a colleague of mine, and we work very closely together. I oversee all of the programming for the network, but also work with her in choosing the films that A&E Indie Films will get behind and produce.
I'm Lucila Moctezuma. I'm the program director at Chicken and Egg Pictures. I started just some weeks ago, and I'm overseeing and implementing the programs for filmmakers. We're supporting women filmmakers and nonfiction media makers from all around the world at different levels of their careers. Before that, I had the luck to work with Brian Newman at Tribeca Film Institute, Renew Media, with the Rockefeller Fellowships. And until recently, I was executive producing director at Union Docs. Yeah.
My name is Alexis Galvez. I work at Cinetic Media. We're primarily known as sales agents, so we help independent filmmakers introduce their films to the marketplace and sell them to distribution companies. But we also manage filmmakers like Matt Heineman, and we also helped sell his film Cartelland, which was an A&E film. And we also do marketing, finance, a lot of different things to help enable filmmakers get their films in the world in a meaningful way.
Hi, I'm Janet Gargi, and I'm with Vulcan Productions, which was founded by Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft. We're based in Seattle. We create documentaries, feature films, series about social change, education. We have a series called We the Voters and We the Economy, which came out a couple years ago. We did the outreach and impact campaign for Racing Extinction. And we have 2 films that are screening at Doc NYC called The Ivory Game, which is on Netflix, and Naledi, A Baby Elephant's Tale. Primarily, the films and stories that we tell are about creating change. And in particular, the films that are showing here are about our work around poaching and trying to save the crisis facing African elephants. But we also work in, we do a lot of work in climate change, ocean conservation, wildlife conservation, education, and also interested in current topics, current events.
Hi, my name is Chris Clements. I have a company with my partner Julie Goldman named Motto. We produce and executive produce documentaries. The most recent one's Wiener and Life Animated, and we got to collaborate with Daniel on Southwest of Salem, which was a thrilling experience.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Loira Limbal. I am the Vice President and Documentary Lab Director at Firelight Media. Firelight is best known as Stanley Nelson's production company. So films like The Black Panthers, Vanguard of the Revolution, Freedom Riders, Freedom Summer, and others have come out of our shop. But we also do 2 other main areas of programming. One is the Documentary Lab, which I am the director of, which is essentially a fellowship for emerging filmmakers of color from across the country working on their first or second documentary films. During the fellowship, we provide funding, one-on-one mentorship, support, and professional development opportunities, really trying to create opportunities for access and inclusion in our field. Some of the recent films that have come out of the lab are Southwest of Salem, which these great people worked on, as well as Memories of a Penitent Heart, which premiered at Tribeca this year, and National Bird, which also premiered at Tribeca and just opened in theaters on Friday. And I really strongly urge everyone to go support it. It's a really incisive and compelling look at the drone warfare, but really through the perspective of veterans and drone operators and the impact that working in that field has had on them. And I think that's it.
We have the director, Landon Von Soest, and we have producer Jeff Truesdale. We're going to let them come to the stage and introduce themselves, and then we'll sit down for the trailer.
Good morning.
A big round of applause.
Brian, I would just like to say thank you for setting such a low bar for us this morning. And Deborah, on behalf of all the filmmakers, prizes or no, we consider ourselves all to be winners just by virtue of the invitation to be here. Thank you so much. My name is Jeff Truesdale. I am the executive director of Ahkeem here with director Landon Von Soest. We are working on this project with co-director Jeremy Levine and producers Iabo Boyd and Nick Weissman, who could not be here this morning. Ahkeem is a intimate coming-of-age story of Daje Shelton, a girl in North St. Louis affectionately known to all as Booney. The film first introduces us to Booney as she is standing before a juvenile court judge. She has been engaged in a fight and expelled from her public high school after meeting with the zero-tolerance policy, like so many policies across the country that threaten the chances for graduation of students deemed a threat or disruptive. We then followed Booney on a journey into her high school, an alternative high school, as she strives to turn the corner and confronts obstacles, many of them institutional, that cause so many others like her to fail. I'm a St. Louis-based staff writer for People magazine, and as I move about my city, I encounter again and again piles of street corner teddy bears and photographs that are organic shrines to young lives lost, many of them young black lives. St. Louis per capita is one of the most dangerous cities in America. It is a city divided by tremendous racial and economic segregation. While looking for stories about those differences, I spent a year in 2010 inside Booney's school. The warmth and determination that I encountered there among the school founder and the staff members, many of whom hail from the same communities as the students, served as a huge inspiration. But more than anything, I fell in love with the students and the families at this school. They welcomed me not only into their classrooms, but into their homes, into their churches, into their celebrations. And I truly felt that their stories and the challenges as they defined them needed to be told on a much larger canvas. That's what brought me together with Transient Pictures, which has an established record of covering stories of social injustice with tremendous nuance and great understanding. Landon?
Thank you. So I've been making documentaries for over 10 years, specifically engaged in social issues to do with social justice, inequality, human rights, and education. So when we met Jeff and kind of had this opportunity to go into this school that seemed like a perfect nexus of the juvenile justice system and the education system, I was kind of hooked immediately. It didn't take very long once we were there to connect with Booney. I think we all immediately just fell in love with this girl. I think we were really drawn in by her resilience, her openness, her kindness. She became our guide not only through the school, but also through her community. She invited us into her home. She invited us into her friends' homes. We went to weddings, to funerals, to birthday parties, to celebrations, et cetera. And she became a very active partner for us in the process. In addition to obviously having her on screen a lot, we actually collaborated very closely with her to develop a narration strand. We discovered early on that she was an avid journal writer, and we encouraged her to sort of continue that through the process and drew a lot of the narration from her personal journal entries. Beyond that, I think, we really wanted to, provide a platform for this partner we had. And really decided early on that we wanted to tell the most immersive possible story. There are no talking head interviews, there are no statistics, no facts that sort of support the film. This is completely an immersive story told through Daje and played out as a narrative experience. I think once we started going down that path, a lot of things happened that we couldn't have anticipated. Many of her friends were killed, but by the same token, she fell in love and experienced this really kind of blossoming teenage romance. She had a lot of challenging times at school, a lot of challenging times with her mother, and really kind of grew into this story about love and loss, about family, about relationships, about community. And ultimately, Daje becomes pregnant, and I think suddenly is faced with this impending reality of becoming the mother of a black boy in America today. I want to share a clip here and just set it up for you quickly by saying that, this was a moment that really sort of crystallized this whole experience for us. The school is in North St. Louis. It's about 4 or 5 miles away from Ferguson, Missouri. We were there in August of 2014 to film the first day of Daje's senior year, and this is going to be the moment that you see. We experience this entire movement through Daje's eyes, and I think the clip is then paired with a reaction of her and her boyfriend Antonio, and some of their reactions and the way that they feel, in a way that we thought best represented some of the intimacy of the film and sort of the way that we handle these kind of major national issues.
Great pitch, and going first is always hard. Everyone can start taking their seats. As just a reminder, we're going to take our seats so we can watch the film as well and then come back up. And the filmmakers will come back up to the stage.
So I apologize for the technical issue. I hope that can give you a little bit of a taste of how we're kind of handling some large issues of a very kind of intimate scope. So we are in a pretty late fine cut. We're very close to locking picture. We've just started to submit to festivals, and we've gotten an incredible amount of support for the project from people like Sundance and the Filmmaker Fund, IDA, and we were very lucky to be funded by ITVS very early on in the process. So we're very hopeful that that will get us a major sort of PBS broadcast. But we were funded with a sizable gap, so we are still trying to raise about $130,000 for finishing costs to finish paying our composer, et cetera, and really looking for the right partners who can kind of move beyond our television broadcast to help kind of create some avenues where younger people will hopefully have access to the film through VOD. Internationally, and ultimately really try to get it into schools and into educational programs, and sort of build off of that in our kind of larger social outreach.
This is a film that takes on very vital, timely, urgent issues: teen pregnancy, school-to-prison pipeline, gun violence, geographic income inequality. But it doesn't do so with the voices of experts. These themes are threaded very much through the characters as they live their lives in front of us, and we see how they deal with the consequences of these realities. What's most important to us as filmmakers is that this is an underrepresented voice, a young black female. We want to take this film to educators and social justice workers who are familiar with these issues as talking points or stump speeches, but mostly we want to make sure that young people see this story. We're looking for partners to make sure that this story reaches them so that they can see a reflection of themselves. Booney is a wonderful guide. We are so grateful that she trusted us to be her outlet for this journey, and we are more than happy to take some questions from you.
Great. Chris Clements, this is a character-driven story, strong central character, something Motto has been very known for. Can you say a few words what you think about the pitch and your thoughts of how it might fit with Motto or not?
Yes, I find it interesting because, like, basically this is it's an immersive, you're immersing us in their lives. So we're not actually going to be speaking about the technical issues that they're dealing with. Because I found it interesting, like when you said she was up in front of a judge and she was being thrown out of school, and they've criminalized what is essentially young children, growing up. And I mean, I grew up in Brooklyn, and we had fights in school. I probably would have been arrested, and I find it amazing that so you're already putting a kid on the wrong footing with that sort of thing. Are you going to be addressing that? Like, are you going to want to speak to that as something that socially and legally is maybe wrong-headed, or do you want to just stay in the realm of your protagonist?
We very much want to stay in the realm of the protagonist. What's important here is that Booney be allowed to tell her own story. She talks about being 5 years old in kindergarten and making a simple, to her, mistake, and then being labeled a bad kid that haunts her through the rest of her education, through the rest of her life, through the way that she sees herself and how people react to her. We don't feel like it's it's incumbent upon us to say, this is the issue, but this is how she sees the world and how she is portrayed and how she reacts. In the same way that these young individuals at 16 and 17 and 18 do not expect to live beyond that, they behave in a manner that causes them to expect that sort of an outcome.
And I'm just curious because we see them getting the information on the internet where everyone gets it. The reveals, you were saying that she loses friends during the course of your shooting. Is the reveal within your film different? Do you have different moments when she comes to know that she's lost someone?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a poignant moment in the film where they sort of collect the school into the cafeteria. There's a little bit of a heaviness about it, but they bring in the assistant principal that kind of sits everyone down and tells them that they've lost a student. It turns out to be a friend of hers, a classmate, someone that she's known. I think this is a case where we sort of buttress some of this information with her own sort of journal entries, and we sort of give her that opportunity to react, not only on screen in the shock of the moment, but also in the way that she kind of internalizes this, talks about, unfortunately a very long list of 16-year-olds she's known that have been killed, and we, again, we're kind of right there along with her. We go to sort of a candlelight vigil and some of the reactions. And I think our goal always is to try to experience these things through her as this very strong guide and sort of give her the platform to react in the way that it sort of internalizes and affects her life.
Okay, I just would say that probably the context is, we're working on a film right now that's interesting. It's about boxers in Chicago on the South Side, and the neighborhood is an element of that. It's a threat that sits outside of the boxing ring where the people are training. And we're struggling with keeping that a presence, because it is a motivating presence. And that's, I think, what your characters are feeling. Like they're there, and the problem is that setting looks very safe, but we know it's not. And I guess what I would say is probably the most important thing, like that really plays if the scene that precedes it or scenes preceding it remind us of the threat that they're under. So that way, that actually resonates, that they actually feel it much closer than just watching it on a screen.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Julie Anderson with WNET, they have some ITVS funding, and you're a public broadcaster. You can tell us a little bit of your questions or comments on the trailer or the pitch?
Mm-hmm. So this is a topic that is very close to my heart. I have a lot of concerns about juvenile injustice and incarceration and many of the problems that we have in our educational system, particularly in the Black urban educational system. And I think I understand where you want to come from, and you want to see the whole problem through her eyes. But I think it's also important that your viewer, when they walk away, they think of it as a larger issue and not just Booney's issue, because Booney is representative of many kids out there who are living through the same kind of stuff. And I don't think that your reel serves you that. I hear what you're saying, that you'll be immersed in her life, and yet you will still get, like, you have to get where the system is failing her, because that's it's happening to her. She's not driving it. So in that case, I think that your reel doesn't tell that story. I think you spend a little too much time in Ferguson, which is a detour, because we've seen all that footage, and I would just even take that out, and I would see more of Booney. But my largest concern is that we need to make sure that we see the larger issues at stake here for kids who are in this system. The zero tolerance system is like absolutely, it's just horrendous that these teenage kids live through that. So I hope that comes out of your story while you're telling her story.
There is a moment of perspective early in this film where the founder of the school addresses the students in the cafeteria, and he talks about national studies that say Black students in Missouri are expelled at higher rates than students anywhere else in the country. This judge is someone who's actually already been a national figure. WNET helped bring this judge to prominence. Back in January, the Judge Jimmy Edwards, who founded the school, was part of a town hall program sponsored by WNET talking about the school to prison pipeline and efforts to reform that. He's always believed that zero tolerance makes no sense at all. And his thoughts on that issue are part of the thread of the school, the narrative thread of the school, as well as his own paternal presence in the lives of these kids and the role that he plays. So that perspective is there, although perhaps it's not as shown as evident in the reel.
And where are you in the process right now? You have a rough cut?
We do. I'd say we have a fine cut that we're sort of trying to polish right now. we've been through several filmmaker labs this summer. We've done a number of review processes and things, and we're really trying to funnel into sort of doing broadcast and festival submissions now. And just to build on this, maybe this is something that we really should have built into our pitch. I think in addition to the judge, you know, the school, through many of the teachers and faculty members and Daje's very close relationship with her mother, I think reveal a lot of this information in what we hope is a very sort of organic way. Her family has been in the community for 4 generations. Her mother talks a lot about the changes, about what she wants for Daje. The teachers also talk a lot about policing, about disciplinary policies. I think what was attractive to us about this particular school is that it's meant to be the antidote to all of those. So I think everyone who works there because they want to overcome those obstacles, and they see all those challenges very clearly.
That's great. I do want to congratulate you on how comfortable she seems to be in front of the camera. It's very authentic. The 2 scenes we saw are very intimate, so it sounds like you've gotten her to be just forget that you're even in the room, which is great.
Great, thank you. Daniel, you have raised your hand. I think that means you want to say something here or ask a question.
I mean, firstly, I think I was very articulate, constructive pitch. I think it would have helped if earlier on in the pitch you'd said what stage you're at, because so many films pitch at an earlier stage that it was, I mean, I happen to know the film, but it was maybe unclear for people to know if this is a projection of what the film will do. But you've actually achieved all this already, so I think it's important for that to be set up front. 2, one maybe nitpicking, maybe not points that I think are very important and that kind of irked me and I think is relevant. Firstly, you talked about providing a platform, which just as a term of language I found problematic. It took agency away from your characters and made you the savior, whereas that's actually I don't think what this film is doing or where it's coming from. And secondly, also I agree with the trailer, with the teaser you showed. I know there is much stronger material for this film. I've seen the cut and I know it's great. This is an outsider perspective of what her voice is. This is not her voice. We didn't hear her speak. We didn't hear her share intimate moments. We didn't see her journey. We saw what other people might think happens in a black community, looking at the internet and reading about Ferguson and celebrating with your boyfriend and things like that. And I think the choice of trailer is my concern with this pitch package.
Thank you, Daniel. Lucila, what are your comments and thoughts and questions on the film? You can find your microphone.
Thank you. Well, congratulations. This is a great project, and you did a great presentation, and we are here to tell you how it could be better, but you have something great there. And I wanted to follow up on what Daniel was saying, because for me, after you talked about her and how great she is and the access you have and all what she's going through, in the trailer, I expected to see more of her before going into her reactions to what was happening in the outside and her intimacy with her boyfriend. I felt I went to the extreme external and then to extreme internal, intimate, but didn't know her yet other than from what you said. But I'm sure you have great footage where we can get to know a little bit more of her struggles, her personality, the way she talks and behaves, and what's going to make us fall in love with her and want to go with her through the whole film, no? And then I'm also glad you clarified your relationship with her and how much she has opened herself to you, because when I was looking at the intimate moment with the boyfriend, I'm like, well, these 2 white big guys, like, shooting this and like being so in this intimate moment so close. So yeah, you have to clarify your relationship with her, because obviously in this day and age, I'm gonna say it, you come the white guy with the camera in the life of this black woman and her situation. It's gonna raise questions, of course, nowadays more than ever, no? And yeah, I definitely want to know more about her. Now, these images of Ferguson, of course, we've all seen them, and this is very well known by us. The important thing in this scene is that we're seeing her reaction and her friend's reaction. But I wonder if maybe you don't need that in a 5-minute trailer, since these are such public images, and it's better to use your time in other things that make this project special and make her special, and the situation is more compelling. So that's just my thoughts. But congratulations. Yeah.
And Alexis?
Yes, congratulations. It was a really good pitch. I'm also very familiar with the project, and I agree. I think in your pitch you talked a lot about how you used her journal entries as a way to kind of structure the narrative, and I think that would have been a good way to introduce us to her voice in the trailer so that we can go more easily into those intimate moments. As someone who also is familiar with the project, I wish you hadn't given away the reveal that she was pregnant, because I feel like that's a very tender moment to experience in seeing the film.
Great. Janet, with Vulcan, they mentioned they want to do a lot of outreach and impact, and I know Vulcan gets involved in that. Do you have any questions for them or comments? And also, could you say a little bit about maybe some thoughts on the outreach and impact strategy?
Sure. I will say, and again, I disagree a little bit with some of the commentary here. That moment where she's with her boyfriend and they're surprised that they've made it to this age, that really struck me, because in any other household, you would take that for granted. So that is a really moving moment that they're kind of in awe, and then for him to continue and say that he doesn't really expect to live much longer. Just to clarify one thing, with Vulcan, we like to get involved early on. And if we're going to get involved with a campaign, with an outreach impact campaign or an education campaign, we also want to be involved with the making of the film. We made a big exception with Racing Extinction, and we're thrilled that we were involved with the gravitas of that film, and we worked with Bryant as well. But we would not come on board at this point to then just fund the education outreach. So in terms of the angle for the point that you want to get across, I mean, if you want this to be in schools, is it more about this rule that you want to change? I mean, what is it that you're trying to educate people on? I'm not really clear about the point of view. So there's these violent communities that they're growing up in, and there's a zero tolerance rule. So you want to change that so there's more tolerance so that kids don't end up out on the streets in these violent situations? Or is it about the police brutality that's happening? I mean, I wasn't really clear on sort of the point of view, because you're showing them watching these violent situations, but then is a lot of the violence gang-related? Is it just the circumstances they live in impoverished circumstances, and there's just a lot of crime? I wasn't clear on that. So I think if you want to do an education campaign, you're really going to have to figure out the right partner. If you're already working with PBS, of course, they have a great education brand, and work with them to create whatever the discussion guide or to tie that into core curriculum in the schools. But it wouldn't be right for Vulcan.
Yeah, you have a question here, Elaine? Or comment? Yep.
I'm going to add to, first of all, congratulations. And I was amazed by the intimacy of the second scene. And really, I'm just kind of going to second what a few people here have said, which is I would have preferred to see the more intimate or the journal entry or something from your pitch first, because I didn't even know whose story I was following in the first one. And then yet, somebody I've fallen in love with, seeing in the context of the nation falling apart the way we see it now is pretty profound. I also, in a pitch, would have appreciated, and it's beautiful, kind of what you were saying, I think, Janet, a little bit of what is this? Is it just a slice of life in this world, a very personal story that is playing out what we hear about in the news, but from a very personal point of view? Or is there some objective of what you hope to come from it, and I don't mean you're trying to get exactly from A to Z, but something a little bit more pointed to kind of hang on. But really, truly, again, like I was going to ask, like, are they shooting themselves? Did you have them shoot themselves at times, even, or were you just always on standby to come? I had a lot of just filmmaking questions, which was a very engaged thing. So congratulations.
We'll have to get to the answer to those questions off stage because we're running out of time now. But overall feedback seems like your pitch was very, very strong. Some changes suggested for the reel that you show. But congratulations, it's always hard to go first as well. And we gave you some technical glitches, but you did a great job pitching. Let's hear a big round of applause.